I'm Alex Gorioran, CSEP. I'm on the International Board of Governors, serving as your Treasurer and Secretary, and also from the Rhode Island chapter. And we know this has been a really incredibly challenging time for all of us. And on behalf of the Board of Governors, our Executive Committee, and the entire volunteer leadership team, we send you all of our best wishes to all of you, your teams and families. And we certainly share with you your pain for the losses and massive disruption this has incurred over the past week and beyond. But the great thing with all this is really our ILEA network is resilient and strong. And although this crisis has really uprooted our entire industry, our ILEA community has the ability to unite and work together to support each other. And it's been really great to see that over this past week. I'm certainly proud to work side by side by some pretty talented, amazing leaders on the Board of Governors, but then also throughout our entire industry. We've seen our community come together to support each other through some of these webinars, some of the open forums that we're doing online through some of the different communities. This past Tuesday, we hosted a webinar with over 350 people logged in to hear Jeff Tannenbaum speak about some of the legal strategies for the events industry. And it was really great to hear some of how businesses are handling some of that, and in terms of contracts and force majeure and some of the things you should consider moving forward. So that was very informative. And yesterday we had a maxed out with over 300 participants with our ILEA Strong Open Forum that was moderated by Sarah Graf, our immediate past president. And we covered topics on communicating with your team and with your clients, and really kind of what we're doing moving forward to prepare for some of this major change. And really more importantly in all of this, in our ILEA Strong community, is kind of checking in on each other and our mental and physical health, and making sure we're all okay as we support each other going through on here. With that, I'm going to move forward in some of the different things that we have going on. If you want to, Marlee, click through. So in the spirit of collaboration and just discuss some of our collective plans for recovery, we're going to continue to focus on rebuilding, reconnecting, and resiliency. And next week we have a couple of different webinars coming up. This one is on March 25th. This one is our ILEA Strong Forum. And we'll be talking about, again, how to prepare for recovery and what we can do collectively and individually as businesses and individuals. And a lot of resource sharing has been kind of going on in these forums. There will be some other webinars that will be ongoing as well. There's going to be one coming up next week around insurance and ways navigating around that. So stay tuned for more information. And we're going to continue these conversations and the exchange of resources as we navigate through this. And then, Marlee, next slide there. So with that being said, we want to encourage you guys to keep the conversation going. So you can go to ILEAHub.com. There's a banner on the homepage that will connect you to our COVID-19 resources page. And you'll be able to get all of the recordings from all these webinars on that website. There'll be a number of different resources, not only for the US, but globally as well, to our Canadian partners and from around the globe. So check that out for some of those resources. But we also want to hear from you guys. If you guys are hosting any virtual meetings or any other resources that are out there, please email us. You can contact any of the board of members, but specifically, we're just calling out Jim Riley here and his email there. He is kind of the collector of all of those virtual events and listings on there, so that we can then share and communicate that out to our entire global network. So with that being said, I want to thank you all again for joining us today. I'm going to, next slide, Marlee, there. We have a number of people on our call here today as panelists. So I want to give a shout out to Rachel Barnett from the ILEA Northern California chapter, Sarah Cisna from the ILEA DC chapter, Vanessa Lane from the ILEA Hampton Roads chapter, Will Curran from ILEA Arizona, and Bobby Dutton from ILEA Boston. And facilitated today by our ILEA Southeast Regional Vice President, Tiffanie Rosier, and our headquarter team, Marlee Honcoop. So thank you very much for everyone. I'm going to turn it over to them to lead us today through our virtual meetings.
Well, welcome everybody. We're really excited to have almost 250 of you all on the call today. And just so that you know a little bit about what we're going to talk about, obviously are welcome. Thank you so much, Alex, for all of the great information and everything that the Board of Governors is doing and working with headquarters to help us all out. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of Zoom. We know that there are a lot of different tools out there, but this is something that we use frequently with a lot of our ILEA meetings, and a lot of you may also be using. So that is what we'll focus on today. But we also are going to give you some information on how you can really engage your audiences in some of these new formats for you, some of you who may have never really utilized Zoom and kind of feel like, how can I really make this work? So we're going to give you some tips and best practices for engaging your audiences. We have, as Alex mentioned, our panelists on here today have done virtual events in some different formats. So they're going to share with you some really great ideas of things that they've done or how they have incorporated virtual events or virtual meetings. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the integrations that you can consider as you're planning your events and utilizing Zoom or any type of software that's helping you with either webinars or meetings. We'll talk about some best practices, how you can use it in your business, but also personally and in other ways of your life to kind of have a little fun as well. And also we'll talk a little bit about pricing and kind of some of the differences and some collaborative opportunities that you may be able to consider moving forward. And then of course we'll try to allow some time for Q&A. I think in the chat, we're going to ask if you do have any resources that you are using. We know that there are a lot of different tools. Feel free to type those in the chat so that other people can then see other tools that may be used as well. And I'm really excited to be working with Marlee on this project that we put together and with all of the help of everyone involved today.
All right, well, before we get kicked off, I just want to go through a couple meeting logistics so that way you know your way a little bit around what your the tool that you're using today in the app, because I know I've seen some of you say that you're newbies. So on today's call, we're going to have mute and unmute only for our panelists. So you'll see that right now we don't have any microphone function for our participants. If you need something, please do feel free to put in the chat. I see that most of you have figured out the chat function, but if you haven't yet and you'd like to see what's going on there, go ahead and look for the quotation bubble icon and hit that, and you should be able to chat with all panelists and attendees today. If you need something, go ahead and raise your hand. There should be a little hand icon in the corner. I know some of you have already been figuring out that feature too. If you need something or have a question, that's also a great way to be able to do it there. I strongly encourage you that as you have questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and click the little Q icon. It should say Q&A, and it should look like a stack of like 3 or 4 little boxes. Go ahead and click that, and then if you agree with somebody's question or have a similar question, you can upvote it by actually liking it. So go ahead and do that. If you need to leave the meeting, there should be a little box in the corner of the app that says leave meeting, and just know that the session is going to be recorded and posted. We know that a lot of you are busy and might need to hop off, so just know that it'll be posted across all of our channels either late today or early tomorrow. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we're just going to go ahead and get kicked off with our content for today. All right, so Tiffany and I thought it would be just smart to let you know a little bit about why we choose Zoom here at ILEA headquarters. It's not anything of a specific certain for a specific certain reason, but these are the reasons that we specifically choose. So not endorsed by Zoom at all here today. It's just that we tend to really gravitate towards using this specific tool. For us, we really enjoy creating interactive environments for our audiences at ILEA. It's something that's really important to us. So we'll go through a little bit about what those interactive features are throughout the webinar today, and you can ask questions if you have questions on them. We like that it's intuitive, it has intuitive functionality for hosts and for participants. I feel like a lot of you have been finding a lot of the features before I even talked about them, which is great. There are 2 different functions that we're going to talk about in just a minute. There is a meeting format, which is highly interactive for peer-to-peer, and then there's a webinar option, which allows you to be highly interactive with your panelists and is more like connecting you to the speaker. And then we're going to talk about some integration capabilities. So that's another reason why we really like it. And we'll talk about those a little bit later. And we also have some customized settings. So I think this is really helpful because as I've been using Zoom, at first I didn't really realize that there was a difference between Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar. Zoom meeting is going to come with any basic package, but the webinar feature is an add-on. So just know that this is going to be your basic package, and this can be something that you can add depending on what your client's needs are or the needs of your business. So both allow for screen sharing, which is what I'm doing right now. Both allow for video sharing, but for the meeting, all participants can video share. And then for hosts and panelists only when you're doing a webinar. View only for participants. So for a meeting, this is not an option, but for webinar it is. So that would be like the option to turn off everyone's video. That's not really an option in meetings. It's only an option for webinar. The capacity is up to 100 with a free license for a meeting and up to 1,000 depending on the planned and large meeting add-on. And then up to, for webinar, you can have up to 100 to 10,000 participants depending on the license. Participant list is visible to all here, but for webinar, it's only visible to hosts and panelists for the full list. Email reminders if registration is enabled for webinar and for meeting. I'm surprised that this wasn't in here. Maybe that's like a little bit of outdated data that I found, but I do know that you can do email reminders here in the meeting as well. Chat, obviously, as we've been chatting this morning, chat is available in webinar and chat is also available in meeting. The Q&A function is only available in webinar. File transfer, it says, is available in meeting only. So we were talking about this a little bit earlier with Will. You can simply just drag and drop a file in and it should share it with everybody, which is great. Live stream options are available for both meeting and for webinar. We'll talk a little bit about the live stream functions later. Let's see, and then for registration, if you have a paid account, you can do registration, which is something that we frequently use here at ILEA, and the same thing with webinar. Closed captioning available for both meeting and webinar, recording available for both. Breakout rooms are only available in meeting, and this is a highly interactive function that we like, especially when we're trying to take something that you would typically do in person to do kind of like a breakout session, but turn it virtual. PayPal integration, that is available for webinar. Okay, and I think that kind of covers it. This is just a little bit of a graph for those of you that have a little bit more, are more leaning to learning visually. So this is kind of like the video conferencing. And here you can see, like for webinar, these are the tools that you can get: chat, raise your hand, Q&A. And then for webinar, you can only see the panelists, but if you were to do just a regular Zoom meeting, everyone would be able to see the panelists or the participants here, and you'd be able to chat directly with them. And just a little bit more for getting familiar, because I feel like this is really important when we're thinking about taking event and going virtual with it, is that there are different roles. So for a meeting, you can have a host. You have the host, which is the person that puts together the meeting and actually owns that Zoom account. Then you have those that are co-hosts. So I could, for example, like today I made Tiffany a co-host. So that's simply just hitting an ellipses and giving her permission to be a co-host with me. So she would have all of the features that I have as the host, which are things like turn off video, unmute people, mute everyone, and different features like that. And then there are participants. So that's everyone that is jumping in on your meeting. And for the Zoom meeting role, that participant would be able to have their video on, have control of their audio on and off, and being able to file share and stream anything that they want from their video. So everyone has that feature, including participants and the meeting with their different roles. For Zoom webinar, you have host and co-host. So today on our webinar, I am the host because I have access to the ILEA Zoom account. Tiffany was made co-host when she entered in. The panelists are those that you see on the call today, like Bobby Dutton, Will, Sarah, Vanessa, and Rachel are all some of our panelists today, which is why they have video. And then we have attendees, which is all of our lovely people on the call today that are interacting. Okay, and I'm going to pass it over to Tiffany to talk about engaging your audience using the webinar feature.
Okay, so just a couple of things. Sometimes, we all can sit in front of a meeting, or, we're sitting at a screen and you're just kind of wandering, thinking about other things. And so some really great ways to engage your audiences and to get them interacting is to consider using polls. That's where you can have some questions, have people polling, and be able to respond, and then kind of get a pulse on responses to the questions that you have. Also, of course, your chat sessions, which on the side, a lot of you are chatting away over there. So we're loving seeing the, the comments that people are adding. You can obviously share your comments in the chat with everyone, or you can choose specific people, or in this case, you could send something just to the panelists if you'd like. So those are some of the features that are included on the webinar side. As Marlee mentioned in the beginning, there's the raise your hand feature. I know that I was involved in some training, and one of the things with that virtual meeting and event was, that's how they kind of helped with, it was something that involved some continuing education credits. So they would have you raise your hand, at, when we got to take a break, and then you'd have to, then they would release your hands to not be raised. So it's a great way to kind of track if people are really kind of there and engaged and participating. So if you are doing some things that maybe require some documentation, that is something that, I'm happy to share more information about on how it was done, but it was a great way for some tracking with that feature. Also, as Marlee mentioned, the Q&A feature, which we noticed there are maybe 2 questions that might be in the Q&A feature right now, but that is something with the webinar that we can then either respond to the individual, or then also respond live to everyone to answer those questions. The screen sharing deck, obviously that gives us the opportunity to share the deck with our participants here. And I know we also talked about sharing things such as video content. Again, with the video, we know that there may be some different versions, or depending on people's, I guess, probably internet or what they have to be able to access, I guess, have internet access, but there could be some lags at times related to video content. So it's definitely something that you would want to test out ahead of time to make sure that the user on the other side is seeing something in more of that real time. So that was kind of a discussion that we had about when you're using video content in webinars. And then of course, document sharing, as we mentioned, where you can drag things in, drop them in, and then people can actually have access to that information throughout the webinar. The next part, is that one still me, Marlee, on that one? So really the difference here, a lot of the things, there are some things that are similar, but there are a few differences we do want to point out. When you're using the meeting feature, which I think a lot of you are probably using more of that meeting function, with that webinar versions, that is an add-on, so there is some additional expenses with that. So I know most of you may be using the meeting option, but you can do things, again, your chat sessions are the same, you have the ability to do your screen sharing of your deck, but something that I think is really neat, and I really credit Marlee, and I know she doesn't like when I do this, but I mean, I have learned so much about using Zoom that, I mean, I'm a believer from like, a while ago, but to learn about all these great features like breakout rooms where you can have something where everybody is together at once, and then do breakout rooms based on, subjects or different areas that you want to focus on, or allow people, maybe your whole chapter has a meeting, but then you have some breakout committee meetings. And so you can have a breakout room on education and programs, and a breakout room on people who want to be part of your membership team. So it's a great way to think about, making something interactive. And then you can actually bring people back together after they've been in those breakout rooms. And so that, again, was something that I know with the, that we did in the beginning, I think of this past year with some of the sessions. And I think it's something that is just a really neat and unique feature to test out if you haven't tried it out yet. Again, you do have the ability to utilize that video content. And then when feasible, having that verbal discussion. Sometimes having, obviously, 280 people on a call, we don't want to have a lot of, people muting and unmuting and chatting and all of that. But when you do have the opportunity to allow for some discussion in your meetings, if you're not using the breakout rooms, considering that option and allowing people to speak. And then, of course, the document sharing, as we mentioned earlier, you have the ability to do that as well. So Zoom integrations with ticketing programs. So you really want to check and see. I know some of you all may be using EventBrite. Some of you all are using Ticket Tailor. You may be using some other type of system, PayPal, etc. You'll want to do the research to find out if there are integration options with your ticketing program for Zoom. It just allows for things such as when you're setting up your meetings that people may automatically get the information to then connect via Zoom, after they're registering, or you're sending out the information, through that ticketing program. So these are just kind of some things to think about as you all move forward the next couple of, weeks or months or, in the future. But thinking about the difference between if you're doing free events. So for example, what we're doing today, where there is no cost, anyone can participate. Maybe you just simply have, upon registration, they automatically get the information to be able to sign up, or, given the join now, and then like you guys did today, then it took you to the webinar. If you're doing paid events, maybe you might consider doing things such as once somebody registers, letting them know that they will receive login information or credentials prior to the meeting. I know that's something that Northern California did recently. I was able to sit in on their meeting and got the registration, and then just before the meeting I was given access to then enter into the to their event. And something you might think about is maybe activating the waiting room. Maybe you have some requirements that they put in, maybe their first, their name and then their ticket registration number. If you're trying to kind of filter out some of that information, again, these are just kind of some ideas to help you as you kind of navigate what this could look like for you if you utilize any of these options. Another thing to think about, and obviously not just ILEA specific, but anybody that maybe has an association or involvement with a member versus non-member. Will you have differences in pricing? Is it something that's free versus paid? And what does that look like? So I know that those are a lot of conversations that people in different associations are having discussions about, especially during this time of transition that we're all kind of navigating uncharted waters. And then the last part, will you open up some of your virtual events to any, and we have ILEA members, obviously we're kind of focusing a little bit on this initially, but will your events be members, if you use ILEA or any other association, is that something that if you have a member rate, can any ILEA member potentially join on your virtual event or your virtual, meeting and pay the member rate if there is a cost, et cetera. So those again are just some ideas of things we wanted to just give you some things to think about as it relates to ticketing and how you might manage in that process.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about, let me go back. A little bit about Facebook live stream, and I'm also gonna open it up to any of my other panelists. If you actually have used the Facebook live feature and what you think of it, I think that'd be really great to be able to share. This week is the first week where I tried to do Zoom integrations, and I found out that you can do a Facebook live integration. So you can do that for your meeting or for a webinar feature, and you can stream it to a group. You can stream it to your personal timeline, to a business page, or to somebody else's timeline. There's also a live stream integration for Workplace and for YouTube. What I found is that I am not technically savvy enough to do the integration for live stream on my own. But I do think that if I had somebody that was a better, more tech savvy, I would have been able to do it for our sessions this week. But I don't know if like Bobby, Will, Rachel, if any of you guys, any of our panelists have done this before, use that feature.
Yeah, I can kind of speak to it. So we used to do this for event icons using Zoom. And so it's actually when you have the webinar platform, it's pretty easy. Just make sure to check the box to enable it in your settings on zoom.us. And then I think you click on like settings or whatever it is, and just make sure to enable it. And then you set it up when you start the webinar. You literally just click stream to Facebook Live, you connect your Facebook account, and boom, it goes to Facebook. Super duper easy to do, but if you don't see it in your actual Zoom program, it means it's not enabled on the Zoom settings on their website.
If you have questions about like any of the live stream or Zoom integrations, please use the Q&A function because it'll enable us to streamline questions later on. Okay, Zoom best practices. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I do to get prepared. And I know Tiffanie is going to be jumping in here with me as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about the practice session. So for meetings, I always like to offer my key contributors. So whether you're a panelist or you're a speaker and we're doing it via meeting, I always offer to do a practice session with them. So that way they can get really familiar with the tool if they haven't had the opportunity to do so. This gives us the ability to test sound. And then when we actually come to day of, I always ask my key contributors and speakers to get on the Zoom link about 15 minutes beforehand. And for that, I enable something called a waiting room feature. So this is only, the waiting room feature is only available for Zoom meetings. It's called something different for Zoom webinars, and we'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. But you can then enable just your panelists or your key contributors to enter into the Zoom meeting ahead of time, so you can get everyone set up and prepared.
So the next part, I'm just talking about determining static content versus dynamic content. That's just really going to depend on, what is the topic about, who's your audience, how many people are engaged and involved. Because again, if you are just sitting there listening to information or just seeing things, slides on a screen, sometimes that may not really allow your audience to really connect. And so maybe as you are thinking about your meeting or your event, to determine what will the actual presentation, I guess you could say, look like, or what will the event look like. And so just determining what is best, or considering, integrating multiple features, which we're doing some, but not all today.
Yeah, and I find that it's really helpful when you are kicking off a meeting. You either have somebody on your staff to help you with this, or another trusted leader that's going to be participating to be someone to do a chat monitor. So if you're going to be going and doing a presentation, have something that's specifically focusing on the chat, answering questions and engaging audiences there. Have a presentation facilitator, so whether that's the speaker or somebody that's just overseeing the deck and making sure that it's advancing as it should. And then we have login support, which typically needs to be somebody that's logged into the master Zoom account. Because if you enable waiting room, you'll have a bunch of people, a bunch of participants just sitting in the waiting room, and you need somebody to actually click to have them enter if you're using that function. And then the chat. So there are, as we see, we've had the chat feature. And so one of the things that I like to do, especially when we're doing meetings and we have a presenter, is that I will oversee the chat, and then I'll verbalize what's happening in the chat, because if there's a recording, it's hard for those that watch it later to understand the dynamic content that's going on within the chat. So that's kind of how we run it here. Tiffanie, do you have anything to add to that?
I was going to say, kind of like, Will in the beginning, kind of, he was verbalizing our chat, like seeing where people were from and saying hello and all that cool stuff.
Exactly. And again, that's all because we typically record our sessions so we can share later on. The only time I typically do not record a session is if we are doing a breakout session. So if we're on Zoom meetings and we do breakouts, it's really hard to capture all 4 of those conversations and make it something that's worthwhile for those that listen on. So those are really the only times that we don't really record. Zoom best practices for webinars. So again, offer training ahead of time. I feel like I always do that with my speakers. Just, I know that seems like a no-brainer, but it's really helpful for people. And the difference is if you want your panelists to be able to do the practice session, you have to enable it on the back end. So when you're setting up the Zoom webinar, there will be a place for you to click if you want a practice session, and you should, I say always do yes, because then all of your panelists can enter ahead of time. You can test sound, video, run through the deck if you need to. And then when you're actually ready to go live, there's a little button that says broadcast, and that actually allows everyone to enter into the Zoom meeting or into the Zoom webinar. Again, Tiffanie has notes on determine static versus dynamic content. It's probably the same as the last slide. Just really take time to think about what you need to be doing with your content during that time that you have with your participants. Again, dedicated roles, chat monitor, Q&A monitor, presentation facilitator, and then always have like your speaker. And again, I think for Zoom webinars, there's really no need to record it. And there's actually 2 different ways to be able to do the recording. There's a way to have it recorded in the cloud, and then anyone that goes to register for your session later, let's say they missed it, it will automatically send them as a link to the recording. or you can record it to your computer directly, and then you can post it on your channels. So 2 different options for using that. Okay, and now I'm happy to be done talking to let all of our panelists talk about the cool things that they're doing to help their virtual meeting format. So I'm gonna hand it over to Tiffanie to really go through and share, help our panelists share about what they're doing.
Okay, awesome. So what we've done is just asked each of our panelists to kind of share briefly with you all just a little bit of how they have utilized a virtual meeting format, whether it was something Zoom related or in another format that was live or virtual. And we're going to start with the ILEA DC chapter and welcome Sarah. So Sarah will make sure that you
Hi.
Yep, awesome.
So we started using Zoom in 2018, and we're using it for webinars that we were doing not quite quarterly, but more or less quarterly. And to answer a couple of the questions beforehand, it's something that we chose as a chapter to offer free to members, all members of ILEA. And then we charge a nominal fee, like $20 for non-members. And we see participation from both groups. And we do the option, we use Constant Contact for all of our registrations. So people register through Constant Contact. We have a special code that we send out to members so they can use that code for their registration. And then we send out the day of the webinar, that's when we send out the link. But having participated now on this, we might do it differently. Now that I know other things. So the most recent webinar that we did was in the end of January. We actually have one coming up already scheduled pre all of this craziness for Tuesday with Karen Gordon of Good Shuffle Pro doing a Let's Talk Tech, which you're all invited to join. But our one at the end of January was talking with the Senior Director of Events for the Washington Nationals, talking about how they planned a World Series run and everything related to that, as well as the celebration and parade after the Nationals won the World Series. And I will say we've done a variety of options. This one in particular, we did interview style, and I actually went to Nats Park, which for me personally was really exciting, and sat down in a conference room with this gal, and we did sort of a fireside chat kind of a thing. And I honestly don't recall if we did video. I don't think we did video for that.
We have a PowerPoint, though. I think there's a
We did have a PowerPoint. Yeah, we had a PowerPoint with slides that we went through. And then, yeah, I see some Go Nats in the chat. Thank you very much. But I will say one of the other ones we did was with Mary Baird Wilcock, who's based in the UK. So it is possible to have a host in one country and a speaker in another country. But our interview style was nice. Even though we were in the same room, we could have done it in different places. But as opposed to just one speaker, kind of going through, very similar to what Jeff did the other day with our ILEA webinar. There's that format, but also just thinking about it's how all of your various sort of content delivery methods in person, you can translate those virtually very easily.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
And then next up for ILEA Northern California, they actually did a multi-panel event just this past week. So if you can give us a brief overview of that, Rachel.
Yeah, so we have been working obviously in this climate on risk management. And so we had an incredible panel with on-site medical help. We also had, someone from a security company. We also had someone from our panelist, our moderator was incredible. She is a planner by trade, but she's been a part of all of our festivals here in San Francisco. And so we were able to really get everyone together. And then we had Stephanie Nix, who does on-site management, but then also is like a queen at government funding. And so she's been one of the really big pushers for the Live Aid Coalition. And she was able to share like specifically with California, but then nationwide, like funding that was slowly but surely being released. And so everything was going to be in person. We were really excited. And Friday, we decided to make the decision to move to a virtual meeting, which was kind of scary. So it was a lot of refunding, but saying you're still registered for the event, don't get scared. But it turned out really, really well. Now that I know, I didn't know about this panelist feature. I knew about the host and co-host, so we did do that. So that's kind of rocked my world a little bit. So I'm really excited for the next time we do it. It's going to be perfect. So I was the moderator. We were using my Zoom account because thankfully with my company, I do have a pro account, and so we were able to take full advantage of it. But it actually, there was one connectivity issue with one of our panelists. So we lost her. She was giving some really good information. You could see everyone writing everything down. And then we lost her halfway through. But besides that, it was really, really engaging. We've gotten an overwhelming response in our survey because we just asked how people liked it. It was the first time we did something on a larger scale. We've had smaller lunch and learns. We've done most of our, board meeting calls were this way now, just so we could see one another and engage. So if we do miss a month that we don't see each other, it was nice to be able to connect that way. But really having people all over the Bay Area, all over the world, connecting with us. We had almost 70 people on our call for something that we switched last minute. So it was it was good moving forward because we know that folks do receive that well. We had a lot more participation than we really thought that we would for such a short notice. So it was great.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And moving up to our other side of the country to Boston. And we'll hear from Bobby about doing a presentation where it's kind of the single presenter kind of format.
Sure. Thanks, Tiffany, and hi, everyone. And I apologize in advance if my internet's not great. I'm in self-isolation and not near all my tech gadgets like I normally would be, but happy to be here and help everybody. So my experience with the whole virtualization thing has kind of been on three fronts. One, from a speaking presentation standpoint, I recently did my Think Like a Pilot session for all of ILEA, which was super fun and worked well. And that was kind of all about just making the content relevant, making the live event relevant, using the interaction so it's more than just a passive video, which is kind of what we've already talked about. And that worked really well. I'd be happy to be an asset to people with those sessions or consulting on that sort of thing. Concerts that I'm seeing for colleges are not able to be easily virtualized. And the reason is, if we just make a video of a concert, that's already out there on YouTube. You know what I mean? If people can watch Coachella video archives, why should they watch their own concerts? So question that we always need to keep top of mind as we think about these things is how are we keeping these live events relevant when we're now competing with all of YouTube and whole industries that have existed purely online for decades. And it's interesting. The third perspective I have on this kind of came out of nowhere, where suddenly this week I found myself with a lot more time than usual. And my partner Jen runs a yoga studio, which had to deal with being virtualized. And we dealt with getting her set up to have classes online. And I got to be kind of purely tech focused on that. It was fascinating and got really into all the hardware upstream of the computer to make it sound good, to make the music sound good, to make the teachers look good, to get the lighting right and all of that stuff, which was really interesting challenges. The most interesting thing, and we talked about this for the yoga piece, was, again, there are platforms for online fitness. Why do we need to exist if it's going online and competing with that? And it was really about community. And I think that's a key word to keep in mind for all of our events. One thing that I found fascinating with her yoga was they require everyone practicing remotely to share their camera, which seems odd because we don't need to see everyone practicing yoga to run a really good session. But that made people feel like they were part of it. Like they weren't isolated in a room and feeling a little bit lonely. They were part of this group of people doing yoga together live. And I thought that was fascinating because I would have never thought of that, about requiring the screen sharing. But it really made an amazing difference and helped answer that question of what's the point of this? Why are we here together instead of just watching some yoga video on YouTube? So keep the community in mind, keep the tech in mind, keep the value in mind, and definitely ask the question, how are we keeping this live program relevant in a very new context for most of us who are used to doing in-person projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Bobby. And, we just like to go like, US, I guess, globe trotting right now in the US. So we're going to go back to the West Coast now and talk to Will from ILEA, Arizona and Endless Events and talking about virtual events. Uh-oh, we can't hear you, Will.
I have two mute buttons. I have a physical mute button and also the mute button on Zoom. So I appreciate everybody's questions. I'm also trying to help with the tech ones. I know I should get this. Thank you guys for all being here. Really quick, I want to try to see if we can do the wave. We want to talk about audience engagement. So we're going to try to do a virtual wave real quick. So everyone go to the raise hand button. And when I say raise your hand, whoa, not yet. When I say raise your hand, I want everyone to raise their hands. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Raise your hands. Put them up in the air. Whoa, look at that. Look at the number go up. It's like, now put your hands down. Now put your hands up. Now put your hands down. You guys, it's like it shoots up to like 200 and then it goes on down. You guys are awesome. I'm going to talk a little bit about non-Zoom. If you're looking to step up your event beyond just like a webinar or people all talking or whatever it is, there's a lot of crazy platforms that allow this stuff to happen. So we're pushing out a lot of content, Endless, about platforms and what you need and everything like that as well. If you are looking to do something more than just a Zoom webinar, it is possible. Just keep that in mind. It's totally possible. And there's a lot of different options out there, from things like even like recreating the one-on-one networking experience. We have tools that we've created that allow us to do that. You guys, anything is possible. This is a great time for you to evolve, to think differently, to think about how maybe you can recreate that in-person experience virtually as well, not just force yourself to just a webinar. I'm trying not to get on my soapbox too much right now. I'm talking a lot about this right now. So if you want to talk more about virtual events and you're looking at amplifying it way more, give me a shout. Find the Endless Events website, subscribe, find me on social media, and I'll post all my stuff in the chat so you guys can connect with me. But anything is possible, guys. Let's evolve as event professionals and do awesome stuff, and keep the questions coming. I'm going to ferociously keep typing and answering your guys' questions in the Q&A panel. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Thank you all. Can you guys tell that we chose like a really good set of panelists here, providing a lot of good insight and information and engagement?
I forgot one thing, by the way, Tiffany.
Okay.
For anyone who does want to know how to convert your in-person event to virtual event, ILEA is doing a webinar with me and Dustin Westling from Calgary chapter. So if you stay tuned for that, that's going to get posted really soon. Just look for the how to convert your in-person event into a virtual event webinar coming soon. We're going to do tactical advice about softwares, tools, planning techniques, design. That's all coming really soon. So keep staying tuned to ILEA. We got more stuff coming your way.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. And now back to Hampton Roads or the West Coast or East Coast for ILEA Hampton Roads with View It, Do It. And we have Vanessa, who's going to talk about live streaming.
Hey there, ILEA, and hey, everybody out there in the world. So I own a company, View It, Do It. I've been live streaming for over 15 years. And we, again, like Will, take everything a little bit to the next level past Zoom. We use professional cameras. We simulcast to multiple Facebooks, multiple Twitters, multiple websites, multiple YouTubes, all at the same time for our clients. And pretty much clients call us when they can't get out. And what do I mean by that? That means they have no internet connectivity. So pretty much we go to remote places that people can't get out, and we use cameras that don't have wires, that don't have cables, and wireless microphones, and we allow them to share their event, whether free or pay-per-view, basically, to the world. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And what I want to talk about that Tiffanie really stresses is it's about inclusivity. It's about how to make people that aren't there really feel like they're there, make them feel like they're sitting right in front of that event, kind of like we're doing in a couple months. We're going to hopefully, knock on wood, with everything going on with the craziness, we're going to be doing a very worldwide fireworks display. And so we let that share that. And again, it's all about chat and about inclusivity. We'll give everyone a little bit of tip. We say that there's 3 things that we think about. You think about lights, you think about sound, and the last thing is you think about internet connectivity. And a free tip out there, you can go to speedtest.net on any device you have. You can check your upload speed. You don't care about your download speed. Check your upload speed. Try to make sure you have at least 5 megabits per second. And so if you're doing a Zoom, make sure your panelists go to speedtest.net and see what their internet is before they log in.
Awesome. Thank you, Vanessa. And we'll turn it over to Marlee to talk about, from ILEA headquarters, about group presentations and then breakouts.
Hi, everyone. I feel so honored to be talking with people that really know their stuff when it comes to making presentations and events virtual. I've had the honor of working with our chapter leaders on creating a couple different interactive sessions. And for me, I love small group sessions, and I think that a lot of our chapter leaders do as well. So I have worked with our Zoom features to be able to create separate breakouts to be able to have those little smaller group conversations take place. There's two different ways that you can do this. And I know that somebody already asked us in the question and answer feature, so I'll run through it again. So you can do it manually. So for example, how far back was that? In January, we did a session that was for one group. We wanted to have our vice presidents of education come together and chat, and then another where we had our kind of executive portfolio, which is going to be like your immediate past, your current presidents, and your president-elects. But we want to do it on the same day to be able to show people that we can come together no matter what. We provided a little bit of content at the beginning, but then we manually broke out those rooms by people's different roles. So that takes a little bit of time. There's actually, similar to like your chat window, it comes up, it's just easy. You have a room and then you assign each attendee to a specific room, and then you can create a room captain. So those breakout rooms happen, but then you as the host can still just hang out in what would be like the main meeting room. So you can be there to help people and guide them if they come in late. But you can also join another session and pop in and see how each of your breakout rooms is doing. And each of those breakout rooms can run separate like slide shares, video content, whatever they need to do for their specific session. And then we bring everyone back together for a group discussion at the end. You can also do it where you have everyone who is going to be talking essentially about the same thing through maybe some content that you did through a speaker. Maybe they shared and then they wanted everyone to go out and, talk about a specific issue and then come back with the group's different ideas. So there's also a button that you can hit that just says, Zoom, break everyone out automatically, and it will do the work for you. So two different ways that we've used it before, but I really like it because I think that those smaller conversations are so key and so important, what makes ILEA what it is.
Awesome.
Did I miss anything there, Tiff?
Nope, I think you got it. And I was just going to quickly mention to you all, I actually last night conducted a virtual fair. Some of you know that I have a background in education, and it was related to 15 different programs and services related to a community college system. And we actually had, each of the speakers had a certain amount of time that they spoke. I made them, we did it in the meeting format, but I made them co-host for the event. So they were able to speak, talk about their subject. We actually incorporated each of their different presentations. So I was actually, sharing the screen. But one of the things to just think about if you do something in that format is you want to allow that transition time. If you are doing screen sharing, if you don't have the presentation as one inclusive PowerPoint. So that's just another idea to think about anything that can involve kind of a virtual fair type of concept. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that if people want to ask offline about how something like that worked. And I can also share that information. So I think we're good on that. So real quickly, because I know we're getting close on our time here, but this is just literally just some ideas how you can also incorporate Zoom in some other areas. Maybe it's not necessarily for, your meetings related to an event association or an organization of sorts, but thinking about incorporating into other ways, maybe with your client meetings or tours, maybe doing group breakouts, maybe a book club that we've all been talking about doing for a while, maybe some professional development activities, or even personal group chats. I love that. I think Sabina from Denver, it was with another group, but they basically had a virtual happy hour type thing or something, but they were all in their pajamas and had a
happy hour hopping like
yes
last night.
So yes, so I thought that was really cool. So, also think about how you can incorporate this in, other areas of your life if you'd like.
You have a lot of questions.
So Marlee, is that? Okay. I can remember that. So basically what we did is we just included a slide that just has pricing information. There is nothing that ILEA headquarters or anybody is getting from this. We just wanted to kind of break it down simple. You can actually look on Zoom and see this information, but just there are certain things that are included with, you know, your free account. If you have an account that's, you know, where you have certain number of hosts or participants, et cetera, kind of that middle plan there is, it's basically about $150 a year. And then if you have a larger plan where you're utilizing a lot more features for people to be able to be involved, then it's about $2,000. But most people utilize the free or the paid, the middle plan there when they're utilizing Zoom.
Webinar feature is an add-on.
Yes, and the webinar feature is the add-on.
Add-on.
So that is not included in these.
I can speak small business wise to like jumping plans. Zoom is very smart, and I only had the free plan. I had multiple people in a meeting, and it was hitting that 40-minute mark, and they're like, would you like to upgrade? Click this button right here, right now. Put your credit card in and away you go. And I was like, yes, I do. Thank you very much. So
awesome.
Yeah. So it's not hard to upgrade.
And some of the things that we were talking about, and just like, of course, there's a cost, you know, for most things, unless you're doing the free option. But we also just wanted to give you guys some ideas, maybe either as a chapter or, you know, different associations and people that are getting together. You might think about having a multi-chapter account if you think you're not going to use it that often, but you want to have sort of that middle plan, I'll just call it. Maybe have somebody that might be willing to be a Zoom annual sponsor. You know, for that one package, it's like, you know, $180, I think it ends up being for a year. Maybe you have somebody that sponsors all of your Zoom meetings for the year, or maybe a specific Zoom meeting sponsor. If it's costing you $15 a month, you know, you offer an opportunity for somebody to be the sponsor. You include them on the slide, and they get to talk for maybe a couple minutes before the presentation or at the end or something. Again, this was specific for ILEA leaders, or others as presenters. Thinking about the popular topics, I think Will and Bobby probably, and I think Vanessa kind of talked about keeping things relevant. So what makes sense for virtual sessions, especially right now? Again, going back to the whatever organization you may be involved in, either considering free or maybe reduced cost options for members to participate. And again, the opportunity to invite non-ILEA members to participate, whether it's paid or free, but just kind of keeping your options open in that. And then again, for the business side, same type of concept, thinking about annual sponsors or meeting specific sponsors, looking out and reaching into your community to see who can be a presenter on topics like Rachel mentioned. Some of those members, some of those speakers, I think may not have been members of, for example, ILEA. And so she looked to her community to help build a really great event, which she said like 70 people on that in a switch was really great. Also thinking of your internal staff as presenters. Some of you who do have employees or, you know, people that you know, they sometimes have this hidden talent or maybe a talent that you know of, and give them an opportunity to maybe be a speaker. Think about other industry experts related to, you know, whatever industry that you're in, having them come and talk. As you guys have heard, several people have been chiming in on to, you know, as to upcoming sessions that they have, because they have expertise in these areas, they have experience. And then again, popular topics. What makes sense for your company or your organization to consider in the future?
All right, my friends. Well, I think that we are at time, but if there are some, if our panelists have time and want to stick around, they can. Tiffany, I know that I have a little bit of time here. If you do, and we can go through some of the questions that I couldn't answer as I was typing through the chat. But the Q&A feature was definitely very active. So you can, if you're interested, you can see some of the answered questions as well. One question was, we are doing virtual attendance at a wedding with Facebook Live.
Wow.
And have it somehow hooked to our Facebook business page. Yes, you can definitely do that. But I wanted to invite guests to see the proper wedding so unwanted comments don't become an issue. Is there a way to have multiple groups all invited to my Facebook business page and signing into the proper wedding with Zoom Facebook? Does anyone know, do any of our panelists know the answer to this? That one's a little bit more of like a complex.
Very techie.
Yeah, very techie.
I would guess one Facebook entity can only be streaming one thing at a time.
Yeah.
That's a guess.
Will, any thoughts?
I don't know if I've ever done multiple ones to a single page. Yeah. Honestly, at this point, get with Vanessa. Vanessa's a live streaming guru. Talk to your Google, hit up Vanessa first of all, and then ask her all these questions. This will help you guys a ton. Like, get with your live streaming gurus right now. That's a little bit more complex than Zoom.
Ashley Cruz says, I am planning a retreat, a virtual wellness retreat, where we have 9 different presenters throughout the day. I need them to be able to take over the session during their scheduled time. Is it best to make this a webinar session during the scheduled time, or is it best to make it a webinar? So webinar versus meeting, and each presenter is a co-host or panelist. I don't necessarily want to be able to see all the presenters' screens all the time, especially since this is a full weekend event. So how many of them will be coming on from their specific session? I also want to be able to record it. Does anyone who feels comfortable fielding that one?
At that point, you're probably getting a little bit more complex than a Zoom again. If the way I'd recommend doing a Zoom for multiple rooms is set up multiple webinars, put those links on maybe a page or something like that, and people can click kind of through. You could totally set up an all-day webinar, and then people can come in and you can have the panelists kind of hang out in the background and then say, for example, oh, I'm going to switch to Bobby's screen. Now Bobby hits screen share and starts sharing. Okay, Bobby's done. He stops sharing. Then Tiffany takes over and starts sharing her screen. You can do it that way if you'd like to, if you want to keep everybody in one room all day long. But again, probably live streaming experts, talk to your AV companies. They'll help you guys with this stuff.
Can I quickly
have anything to add? Yeah, I was just.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go back to the wedding thing. There are ways to stream simulcasting for multiple groups. There are. It's a little bit more advanced, so just hit me up and I'll walk you through some of the processes. One of the things you have to be careful on Facebook is copyright issues, especially with wedding music. They will shut it down. And usually they will wait until after the event is over, but sometimes they will shut it down during the music and while it's being played. So that's one thing to be cognizant of.
I want to piggyback on that too. And the common question I saw asked like 3 times was, if you play in copyright music, do we need a license, things like that? A license will not keep Facebook from shutting you down for copyright music. You need to play royalty-free music. One I recommend is called Soundstripe. You pay like $20 a month. You have to say every single time what the song is being used for, but it's one of the best unlimited services. One thing, keep in mind, those free royalty-free music websites, sometimes they end up getting the artists are like, wow, I'm making so much money from this. I'm going to now copyright it. And I've seen royalty-free music that becomes copyrighted music and can shut you down as well.
Exactly.
Vanessa, can you share your contact information in the chat? Because a couple of people are kind of asking for it.
Tiffany, I think this one is for you. What did you use, or is this for, I can't remember, this is for Sarah, for Tiffany. What did you use the virtual fair for? Was it like a multi-panelist interview?
So basically it was 3 student services related areas of the community college, and then 12 different academic programs. So each faculty member or staff member spoke about their program, their educational program or their service, and then probably about half of them had their own PowerPoint, so we incorporated that in there. The other ones, we actually had generic slides that had their area and contact information and the URL to their specific part of the website, so that the viewers could actually have information as well. So that's what it was actually used for. So it was for high school and community college students interested in academic programs and student services events at a community college.
Tiffany, that was great. This one is from Ashley. Question, how do you do, I think we already answered this one. Okay, we'll do the last one is Fred. As a photographer, can you use Zoom to screen share with your client to decide on which photos to order in Photoshop to enhance? Yes, you definitely can. I would definitely recommend doing it as a meeting, and then you can simply screen share and walk them through as you go through the photos. Will, it looks like you had something to add to that one too.
Oh, no. I was just saying, I was marking it off on the list.
Yeah. Okay.
Marlee, can I ask the questions that were asked in the Q&A? Somebody's asked the question, like they don't see the answered tab. Is that something that they would see as a attendee? They said they see.
They should be able to go in and see what's answered and Sarah says no.
No, actually, I wrote back to Deborah too. When I was on Jeffrey's, all you see is You see like open questions and then my questions. You don't actually see the answered ones.
Maybe we can.
Jen Poyer says she was able to view the answers.
Oh, intriguing.
So Jen.
Okay, good. That's great.
Because I opened the Q&A box the other day for Jeffries, and I was like, I don't see any questions. Where are they reading these questions from?
All right, well, we have kept my panelists over 5 minutes, so thank you so much for your extra 5 minutes and spare time. Thank you everyone that joined us on the Zoom call today. I hope what you heard was very useful to you. The recording is going to be posted on all of our social channels by tomorrow, if not sooner. I will reconnect with our panelists to see if they'd be willing to share their information with the broader audience, because I know I've had lots of requests for that. And again, stay healthy, stay safe. ILEA is here to support you through this definitely challenging and interesting time. But as we've said, I know you all are ILEA strong, and we're definitely going to be able to adapt and continue to hear throughout the coming weeks just some creative ways and solutions. So
don't forget to use ILEA members. Don't forget to use the open forum to continue asking questions.
Yes.
Of your fellow members.
Yeah, we're all here for you, whatever you need.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.